most of the time we take our ability to speak and to communicate for granted. And there's no question that language plays a critically important role in description, comparison, the exchange of ideas. If I say to you, it's raining outside, we call that a word to world fit. In other words, the words, it is raining, fits with what is actually happening in the world, raining. If I say to you, it's cold outside, that same thing. The word matches the existing world. And that's a very important function of language, but I want to focus on two other functions of language that tend to go unnoticed. The first is language and its role to create new futures. So, in 1961, when John Kennedy said, by the end of the decade, we'll put a man on the moon, that became a declaration. It became a description of a future that had not yet happened. And it inspired a whole bunch of different people in different fields of expertise to work so that that can happen. And indeed, in 1969, we put a man on the moon. That's an example of a world to word fit. In other words, we're fitting the world to the word. The word was, we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. That happened, and the world then fit the word. When a university declares that somebody is a full professor, the world now fits that word. So this role of language, we call it its constitutive role, its role to create new futures, its role to be generative and creative, is an extremely important aspect of its use, and one that leaders harness to create change. The other role of language, which is important to recognize, is its role in access. Now, what does that mean? Language is what gives you and I access to the many subworlds that we inhabit. So, for example, there's a subworld of medicine. There's a subworld of law, subworld of plumbing, cooking, art. These are all subworlds, and for you and I to inhabit those worlds and function in those worlds, we must speak that language. This, by the way, is one of the reasons it's so important for physicians to communicate effectively with their patients, because their patients don't speak the language of medicine. And you'll discover fairly quickly, if you try to function in the world of molecular biology, that you can't do that if you haven't mastered that language. You won't be able to communicate with people in that domain. You won't be able to work. You won't be able to innovate. So that access requires language mastery. This raises, for me, an interesting question, and one that is worth mulling over. And that is, might there be a language of leadership, and specifically a language of leading yourself, that could assist people on the inward journey of leadership so that their journey could be more fulfilling and more enlightening? And the answer is yes, we think there is. It's not a complete language yet, but you can read about it under the resource section of the Inward Journey of Leadership.